Hi everyone. What the heck? Let's just do some reading. I just feel like it. And I checked. And the next two stories are reasonable in length, and then the one after that is really long. So we're only going to do two tonight. And we're reading the book called Michael Savage's book, God, Faith, and Reason. And Michael Savage is a radio personality. He's a doctor of herbology or homeopathic. And he also writes books, mostly does books on political commentary. But this one is about religion. Every once in a while he gets off on the political tangent, but he's been pretty good the last couple stories. So we're going to start with Jerome's story. Jerome's story. I want to reiterate, I'm not a particularly religious man. I was raised in an atheistic household. I told you. My father was an atheist from Russia, and his grandfather. And my mother was a kind of very faithful believer, but not religious. I wonder what that means. But she knew God existed. She did things that made me understand that. Tragedy befell the whole family. But the way she dealt with it was one thing. The way my father dealt with it was another. The way I deal with it is yet another. I learned to be a speaker because of my mother's sadness and tragedy. Now I saw his brother was severely disabled, and that's what he's referring to. And we found that out in a previous story. But I'm going to, again, mention a heroine of my life, a good example for me, which is Annie Reinschman. Watching her take care of her severely disabled son, Conrad. Connie Reinschman. It wasn't sadness and tragedy that filled my head. I was curious. I was questioning. I didn't understand. I never seen a child so big unable to take care of their most basic needs. But it was also a huge everyday testimony of love. Little Reinschman friends of mine, got a jewel in that, Annie. My mother was deeply saddened by what had happened to my brother. She couldn't fathom what had happened. She'd had a healthy daughter, then a healthy son, and then another boy who looked perfectly fine. He had blonde hair, blue eyes. He looked perfectly normal. But after a short period of time, they found out he was not normal. He could not see, he could not hear, and could not speak. He was basically a vegetable, or so they thought. It wrecked the whole family. My mother cried endlessly. No one else knew that. And what does a little boy do when a mother is crying? He tries to make her happy. Good on you, Michael. So I would entertain her. I would do stupid things. I became an entertainer for my mother. I'd imitate people. I'd put on faces. Oh, my heavens. My brother, Jeff. He hated to see people so I can't even speak. He hated so much to see people sad that he didn't even want to have a funeral. He didn't want to be responsible for sadness. Oh, Michael. So here we go. So I would entertain her. I would do stupid things. I became an entertainer for my mother. I'd imitate people. I'd put on faces. I'd make sounds and noises, and I'd wipe the tears away. She'd stop crying. She would smile. If you read my book, Teddy and Me, I haven't yet. Oh, hey, Mugsy, let's get another book, because Teddy and Me, that's about his dog. You may remember the story about my brother Jerome. I loved him very much. I learned to talk and to entertain because of the tragedy with my brother. So it affected me in that way. I learned to entertain my mother, and as you can see, I can go from maudlin to the enraged in 1 second. Yeah, I've heard that on the radio. He can. In 1 second, I can turn from a kind of maudlin, sad guy into an enraged wolf. He can. I have heard him do it. It all rages inside my soul, and in that sense, I'm very much alive from top to bottom. His rage comes because of a great love, a love of caring. But I also learned how to talk to audiences and animals because of my silent brother. I wrote about this in one of my books. Everyone said, don't talk to him. He was sitting in a high chair strapped in. They told me he was blind and deaf and couldn't speak. And when no one was looking, I would sneak into the kitchen to talk to him. Good on you, Michael. My goodness. If I'd have been your aunt, your relative, but we had relatives like that because I had a disabled cousin, but he wasn't disabled like Connie Arrangement was. But he was trapped, he was a big full-grown guy trapped in like the mind of a 6-year-old. But I would tell you, take his hand and put it on your chest while you talk to him so he can feel the vibration. Let me tell you how primitive medicine was in the 1940s. They told me, the healthy brother, don't talk to your brother, you'll bother him. I thought, if he's deaf, how can I bother him? He can't hear me. So I talked to him anyway because I loved him. I just loved him so much. And I would whistle to him because I didn't think he could understand words. So maybe whistles. And he would smile when I whistled to him. So I said, wait a minute, if he can understand the whistle, he knows his brother's here. Maybe he could hear a little bit. Maybe it depended on what was the frequency. Then I'd hear the voice, Michael, Michael, what are you doing in there? Are you bothering Jerome? Come on, get out of there. Later, the backward doctors of the day decided that for the sake of the healthy children, he would have to go to a home. I want you to think about the profound impact on the healthy children who felt responsible for sending him to hell. Oh my God. See, they wanted my Aunt Rosie to do that with Lonnie, our disabled cousin. God bless you, Aunt Rosie. You didn't do that. You kept him or was it, maybe it wasn't Lonnie. I can't remember if I remember his name now. Reuter. That was my Aunt Rosie's married name. She did not do that. But I never thought of that. If you say it was for the sake of the healthy children, then those healthy children are going to feel like it's their fault their brother was sent to that institute, which they viewed as hell. Oh, here he's got Isaiah 35, verse 5 through 6. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap as a hart, and the tongue of the dumb shall sing. The day came when they had to take him to a state home. It was a horrible place on Staten Island. I can't remember the name of the home. It was a snake pit that was exposed as horrible years later. Do you think the VA hospitals are bad? That he took away this little helpless 5-year-old boy because the doctors were such quacks in those days. In those days where we lived, everyone knew everyone else. I lived in a tenement in the Bronx. I can't remember if it was 6 or 8 stories, but everybody knew everybody. It was like a Satyajit Ray movie. I don't know what a Satyajit Ray movie is. If you've ever watched Indian movies about India, Calcutta, the teeming masses, well, that's my childhood. Those were the days when you'd see women sitting outside in front of the building in chairs, just like in those old black and white movies, watching as the children played in the streets. That would be preferable to what they have today. In the summer, they'd open the hydrants so the kids could run through the water. That was our swimming pool. The gutter and the water. It felt good to me. I enjoyed it. It was cold and fresh, and the women would protect you from any potential danger. But there was no potential danger there because nobody sped down the street. There were no guns going off, and perverts were thrown off the top of a building. If there was even a hint of a perv in the neighborhood, the men would find him and they would throw him off a building. So there were no pervs around. That's probably not good. The men in my neighborhood didn't wait for a judge to tell them what they could do. They'd either beat a perv up or throw him off a building. So we had a very safe childhood in that sense. So everyone knew everyone else. I'm going to imagine what they're referring to as perverts were maybe the pedophiles. I don't know what their idea of a pervert was, but back in the 40s. So everyone knew everyone else, and the day comes, everyone hears that they're taking away my brother. Everybody's in the street. There's crying and there's sadness. The whole neighborhood sees this going on. My uncle, a strong man, breaks down and cries like an infant right there in front of everyone. My little brother is taken away in an ambulance. I don't even know who took him. 2 men in white. That was the beginning of something, and it was also the end of something. What am I supposed to believe? That God made a mistake? It was just a mistake in the hospital. Somebody made a mistake somewhere and they did this to him? Or was it a neurological defect that created my brother and there was no reason for him? I believed he was created like that for me. I believe my brother was created that way for me to be as articulate and as impassioned as I am. In that sense, I feel very guilty. I must live for 2 people. I never knew who felt that. I've told you that before. Not me, Michael. It's my first time hearing it. Otherwise, there's no explanation for me to be alive this long, not with my genetic inheritance and not with the stress level I've lived with. I should have been dead a long time ago, but the point is that God had a certain fate for me. I think it had to happen, that my brother had to be punished for me to live the way I am. Would you believe that? No. No, he wasn't punishing your brother. He was trying to teach the rest of us how to be compassionate. We were not, in the case of your brother, we were not compassionate to your brother. We were not compassionate to you, Michael, to that poor child in a home. I can see if you're not capable of taking care of them, change their clothes, give them a bath, change their diapers, feed them. But as long as the family was capable of taking care of them, like my aunt did, and like Annie did, then it should be left that way. So he has Genesis 50, verse 1 through 3. And Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel. And 40 days were fulfilled for him, for so are fulfilled the days of embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. My father's death. Prelude to this story. It's been almost 50 years since my father was found dead in his store. I didn't know all the circumstances, nor did I care to inquire. At the time, I was living in Honolulu, 6,000 miles away, pursuing my own dreams. Not long ago, I got off the telephone with my cousin Sam, who told me for the first time that it was he who had closed my father's eyes, removed his wedding and other rings, taken the cash out of the safe and bundled it up for my mother, and so on. I didn't know all the details. Strange how it came up in the conversation. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon here in California, and I was just thinking about the few relatives I have left on the earth, and how my cousin Sam had always been my favorite. I had forgotten that, although he had graduated college and was quite brilliant, perhaps smarter than I, he had gone into his father's store in the antiques market, where my father also had a store. In any case, one word led to another, and he said, "Don't you remember? It was I who found your father." I said, "No, tell me the circumstances," which he did. I said, "How did you know he was dead?" He said, "He had a little Italian guy working for him in the stand named Tony. It was a busy Sunday, the kind of Sunday you wanted. People were teeming in and out of the market. The streets were full, but everyone was buying. Tony came out. His face looked white, and he said, your uncle, your uncle. Sam continued, I went in there, and your father was slumped on the floor. I said, what do you mean slumped? He was lying down? He said, no, he was sitting down in the back of the store, the little stall in the store, with his back to the wall and his head to the side. I went in, and his face was blue, and his lips were blue, and his head was to the side, and I dashed out to my father in the midst of the busy store, and I said, Dad, Uncle Benny is dead. He said, what do you mean? What? Are you crazy? No, I said, his face is blue. I know what slump means. I got called to a neighbor's house and we found a slump once. I know exactly what he's talking about. Sam said, my father didn't even want to go in and look. He said, you better go in there and take all the valuables before the cops get there. They'll clean them out. Sam did just that. I went in and took your father's rings off, his watch, his wallet. The safe was open. I bundled up whatever cash was in there. It wasn't a lot, a few $1,000s maybe. Put it in the envelope for your mother. Took it out. We called the police. That's the whole story in a nutshell. OMG. Can you imagine not trusting the police so much that you take all the valuables off and around your dead one before you call the police? I told Sam, well, live and learn. I had no idea. I asked him who notified my mother, who was at home in Queens in the little attached house. Sam replied, I don't really know, but by the time we got home, your house was full of people. Everybody was there, like your uncle, your aunt, and neighbors, full. Your mother was on the couch, lying down. I thought to myself, God, what a different world it was. Everyone was there. In my world, living alone as I do, no one will even know when I die. I have millions of listeners, and I'll die alone. And here he was, a humble immigrant, surrounded by family and friends. Who was the richer man? The immigrant or the immigrant's son? I'll let you, my dear readers, decide. I agree. We've gone forward so far into the future, we have lost the most precious things of our past. And one of that was family. Sad. Sad way to end the stream today. But we're going to end it because the next story is Rabbi in a Brothel, a fable, and it's very long. And I don't want to read that tonight. And I'm going to say, God bless, I love you. And I'm going to make a special request, say a special prayer for my brother-in-law who's in the hospital in the ICU with pneumonia. And he's also fighting cancer. Such is life. Okay, bye.